I'm Jeannine Bogard, and I'm the business lead for the Home and Garden Vegetables program under Syngenta Flowers. Oh boy, I've been here for 32 years, and it seems like an eye blink at times. And I like to joke with people that I actually grew up here, but I do have a little history in the industry before I came on board with Syngenta. And I started, my first job was working in greenhouses down in Texas. And the interesting story there is I had never worked a day in a life in a greenhouse ever in my life. I came from the auto industry. I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, so I didn't know anything about plants at the time other than when I studied in school or experienced in my own garden. And back in the 70s or early 80s, at that point, the unemployment rate was 17% in Michigan, and you couldn't even get a job at McDonald's. And Bedding Plant International happened to have a conference in Michigan at the time, and they hired me basically sight unseen. I got in a car. 2 weeks later, I was down in Texas in a greenhouse learning how to grow potted plants, and I started off as an African violet grower and growing other potted crops such as gerbras and poinsettias and things along those lines. So it was quite interesting. Then the oil industry went out in Texas, and I wound up moving out to California here and have been here ever since. My dad always joked that he would like to see me, something happen where I ended up in Hawaii with pineapples, but I'm pretty content here at Syngenta in my current role. My earliest memory of gardening goes back to when I was 5 years old, and growing up in Michigan, there's no such thing as a fence. And the gentleman who lived across the way actually was a farmer in the area who had sold off all the land, and our house was built on it, and he still maintained an acre garden over there. And curious, there I was watching him over there, and next thing I know, I'd be going over there and sitting in the garden with him watching the garden grow. And I think he looked at me and said, "Weeder." And the next thing I know, he's teaching me how to side dress fertilizer and plant radishes and cucumbers and corn and all sorts of fun stuff. So I remember very fondly being with Mr. Polakowski out in the garden, learning how to grow vegetables when I was 5 and 6 years old. I went to school at Michigan State University, and it's kind of funny. I got full of funny stories here, but at the time when I graduated from high school, it became really evident that if I didn't have a career plan, I was going to wind up in the secretary pool over at Ford Motor Company, and that just wasn't going to cut it. So on my own, unbeknownst to my family, I started sending out applications to universities, and I got accepted to Michigan State, a few others too, but I drove myself up to Michigan State and viewed the campus. You know, most people, parents take them on the tours. Oh no, I drove. And I really liked Michigan State, and I had no idea what career I was going to study at the point other than I was going to college and I was going to go to Michigan State University. So I initially started off in biotechnology, and so I was taking a pre-med program, which is why I'm really so strong in the sciences right now. And my heart wasn't there, and it was always with the plants. And my friends at the time kept telling me, "Jeannine, what are you doing? You need to be with plants and flowers." And so I looked at the horticulture curriculum, and everything lined up except for an anatomy course. So I had all the science requirements and stuff. So then I started studying horticulture, and it was like I fell in love with the field, and I've never looked back since. The best decision I ever made was to start studying plants. Oh boy. I was working for a grower down in Salinas. I was growing cyclamen at the time, and I want to say they made the mistake of bringing me up here for a field event. And I remember walking around the site, looking at all the trials, and I'm like, God, this is a cool place, and I got to work here, is basically what happened. And I think 6 months later, I wound up here. At the time, the company I was working for was struggling, let's just say struggling at the time, and my supervisor pulled me aside one day and said, "The future here isn't too bright, but I have a friend who works at Goldsmith who's looking for somebody, and you'd be perfect for the job." So I started a letter campaign at that time, because there's no such things as fax and email and all that fun stuff. So I wrote him a letter every week, literally every day. So when he came in off the road, he found a stack of mail from me. And so they had to call me up and find out, who are you? And so I came in for some interviews, and I'll never forget one of the questions they were very concerned about, because I was applying for a product representative role entailing being out on the road calling on greenhouse operators at the time, and they were concerned about me traveling and being on the road by myself. And I just looked Joel Goldsmith in the eye at the time, and I said, I will go anywhere and talk to anybody about anything. And he said, I believe her. And a week later, I was working here. So I've been on this site for 32 years, and I feel like I've grown up with it. And but that's how I got here, is basically being persistent and identifying an opportunity and a place that I wanted to be. And I fell in love with the family at the time. I fell in love with the company, and I've been here ever since. Yeah, it's really kind of funny because people think I've been in the same role all these years, and I haven't. And I started off as a product representative, and then I was trialing coordinator. Well, we wore multiple hats, so I organized cast events, the equivalent of cast today, field trials, sample programs, and then I started getting involved on the cultural technical side and developing some of the first bedding plant culture sheets in the industry. And actually people started emulating the Goldsmith culture sheet at the time because it was so powerful and provided so much great information to the grower. Then from there I went into sales and product management and basically wore all the different hats. Syngenta purchased Goldsmith back in 2008. And that was a little bit of a culture shock, going from a family environment into a bigger corporation. But it took a little transition, and at the time I started off as a market analyst, and I love market intelligence, and that's a really strong point of myself. I really like to follow trends and data and figuring out where the market's going. And then product management, and then an opportunity came up in 2012 to lead the home garden vegetable division, and I jumped on that. So backtracking to my university training is actually in vegetable science. And so I like to joke that I took a 20-year detour through the flower world to get to the role I always wanted to have, which is actually working with the vegetables. And having the opportunity to work with commercial vegetables and flowers simultaneously is the dream job. And I actually believe I have the best job here in our organization. That's a great question, and we get that a lot of times when I'm talking to folks out there within Syngenta, because it's such a big organization. And Syngenta Flowers is a very dynamic, energetic group of folks who are really intent on bringing the best flowers into the marketplace. Everyone here is very passionate about what they do, and I talk about I have the best job, and my coworkers will tell me they have the best job too. So it's a breeding organization. We do breed world-class flowers for the global market. This is a research site here in Gilroy, California, and it has a very diverse group of people here, from growing staff to technical staff to plant breeders, the whole 9 yards. But I think what Syngenta needs to know is that we bring the beauty to the organization. We bring flowers for the soul. And we actually do beautify the world. And if you go to any garden center across North America or Europe or Japan or anywhere, you're going to see a strong showing of Syngenta flowers on the shelf. Oh, golly, I have quite a few. One of the really cool things is the geranium program that we have here. And Goldsmith started off as very prominent in the seed geranium market, and then all of a sudden we started venturing into what is known as a vegetative geranium, which is a geranium that's propagated from cuttings. And at the time it was a big debate whether we should go into that or not. And what's great about geraniums is they're drought tolerant, they handle sunshine. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. It's a bulletproof plant. And when we started breeding in the geraniums, we came across this genetic, Mitch Haynes bred it, and we call it calliope now. But honest to God, that is the first plant that ever stopped me in the tracks when I was running through a greenhouse. And I didn't turn around, I just backed up to take another look at it because this thing was just stunning. The color on it was bright red, it was just stunning. And it has become an industry leader in the geraniums. And where it's gone from there is it's just not just one geranium, but it's branched off into different habits. So we have Calliope large, Calliope medium, we got Moxie, we got Mojo, but they're all built off of this genetic. And I'd say out of everything that we've bred so far, the Calliope series is one of my favorites. I'm a creative person. I just love creativity. So one form of outlet for my creativity is my garden, and I use it as a artist palette. And I'm called the crazy plant lady even within my friends because I will rip out my garden every 3 or 4 years and totally reinstall it on a different color theme. Right now I'm into a tropical theme, so I like oranges and pinks and yellows and a little bit of rose thrown in, but I've gone through my purple phase, my blue phase, I've gone through salvia phase. So my friends like it because when I do transition my garden, I dig up everything and I hand it off to my friends. So it's kind of like getting the garden ready to go. When I'm not playing in my garden, then I really like, I've been into jewelry making in the past. Right now I'm into art. I've been doing mixed media art, collage, acrylics. I'm starting to play with watercolors, things along those lines. But I just need to let my creativity out, which backing up ties into very well with things that we do here in sales and marketing in Syngenta, because you need the creativity to bring programs forward. And it's kind of a great way to, it's a good hobby for me, is being able to actually bring it into my professional life with the creativity also. Back in the days before the drought hit here in California, I used to go wild mushroom hunting, and I absolutely loved it. And what my fellow mushroom hunters didn't know about me as a horticulturist is I didn't hunt for the mushroom, I hunted for habitat. I looked for the environment. So I was really good at it because I knew what trees, I knew the duff, I knew the soils and stuff and what to look for, and then magically the mushrooms would be there. So yeah, that's one thing I don't think a lot of people realize that I've been doing over the years. I've been around quite a while, and a really interesting thing was the development of plug culture. And so early on, growers, bedding plant growers, were sowing in open flats, and they were really struggling with seed quality at the time. And I was kind of on the beginning edge of that and working with the people who were developing the plug culture, and actually being the one out in the field explaining to the growers why they needed to convert over to plug culture as opposed to open flat sowing. And that was a lot of fun, but that was a really groundbreaking innovation at the time. And what that actually drove a lot of things in the flower industry, because it forced the breeding companies to improve their seed quality. In order to get a 90%, 99% germination in a plug tray, you really had to up your seed quality at the time. So then internally, there's a lot of fun things going on, looking at seed quality and storage and sizing and all sorts of stuff that's needed in order to produce a quality plug tray. So out of a lot of things, I think the invention or the innovation of plug culture did a lot to drive this industry forward. The next 10 years. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to retirement at some point, you know, but as I always say, as long as I'm having fun, I could still be here in 10 years if Syngenta wants me, you know, but I see myself maybe down the line eventually considering to retire, but I'm not there yet. So, but what I really like to do with this home garden program is really take it to the next level. And it's been a lot of fun this week with our cast event and explaining to our visitors what I see the vision is of home garden and where they need to step up to bring it forward. And so where we saw with the plug grower down the line, I see that happening with home garden right now. And even today I was chatting with some folks, and they spend a lot of time as bedding plant growers picking out the appropriate flower variety for the container that they're growing in. And then once they get into the home garden space with the vegetables, they just throw whatever they want in a pot and sell it out the door. And it's doing a real disservice to the consumer right now. And my goal is to get people to start thinking about what that product is through a consumer lens and what the expectation of the performance of it. And they need to be very specific with the varieties that they're putting into their program so it's appropriate, so that we get a very positive experience and a repeat experience from the consumer. A great example of this would be what they in the industry we call a cage program, and everybody's seen these. You go to the garden center and you see the tomato in a pot with a cage on it, and they call that a cage program. And what's happening is they're not picking the right varieties. So I look at the variety name on there and I see an indeterminate cherry tomato that's going to get 6 feet tall growing in a container that's yay high. And the consumer takes that home and they seriously think they did something wrong. And so what I'm pointing out to our visitors as they come through here, both growers and retailers, is that Syngenta has varieties that are appropriate for that container, so we can help them elevate what they're selling downline to the consumer. But the awareness needs to be there. And it's not there to do, I don't want to say they're doing anything wrong, you got to be careful on how you say that, but they really are. But it's like, let's do it right. And we have the product that will help you get there and the expertise to get you there, and bringing them along on our journey at the same time. Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I'm involved with what they call the National Garden Bureau and All America Selections. And on the National Garden Bureau, which is a industry nonprofit that promotes product into the market. It can be flowers, it can be gardening tools, it can be fertilizers, it can be all different things. But one of the things that I've really done over the last year since I joined the Bogard is that I'm able to drive change. And change is needed in this industry in order to help move the whole industry forward. It's just not Syngenta, but the whole industry needs to move forward. And being on the board, I'm able to do that. The other organization I'm involved with is All America Selections, which is actually a trialing organization that evaluates plant varieties, both vegetables and flowers, in-ground across the nation in a variety of places. And as judges, we score them and we award, we give an award for the best performing varieties out there. So for my colleagues who are going to a garden center or shopping in a catalog, if you see the All America Selections winner emblem on there, you know it's going to be a strong performer in your region. No matter where you are, it's going to be a great performer for you. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is how many awards Syngenta has for All America Selections winners. And it's really a great way to recognize our plant breeding staff for the greatness that they do out there with these varieties. And actually there's a little competition among the plant breeders of how many awards they can get over their career lifetime. And we have a couple plant breeders on here who have quite a few feathers in their cap through All America Selections. I have always been involved with National Garden Bureau since I've started my career with Goldsmith Seeds in the flower side of things, and involved with All America Selections. But I've actually been on the board now for 3 years, and I'll be installed as president come fall. And then I will continue on to be past vice president, they say it. So my commitment to Syngenta is, as long as I'm with National Garden Bureau, I'm here for the long term, because I really enjoy working with National Garden Bureau and helping driving their organization. At the same time, I'm also helping to support Syngenta and making sure our initiatives are being transferred over into the National Garden Bureau and our interests are being taken into consideration. So I'll be here for a while.